Welcome to Let's Humanize the Workplace. Hi, my name is Vivian Acquah, and I need to greet you because I don't know where you are watching this from. So maybe it is good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And my name is Vivian Acquah. I'm a certified inclusion strategist operating predominantly in Europe, but now I'm having a conversation with, I have to boost her because she is that big. I came across her book Inclusion on Purpose, and I felt seen. I felt the mystery around me being a woman of color in the workplace was demystified. And then she came up with another book, Uncompete. And I was just like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. So, to properly introduce her, let me grab my scripts to properly introduce her because Ruchika Malhotra, she is the author of the best-selling book Uncompete, but also the best-selling book Inclusion on Purpose. And it's about rejecting competition to unlock success. And she's also the founder of Candour and inclusion strategy practice. And as a formal international business journalist, her work has been featured in so many publications, such as the New York Times, Harvard, but also Business Insider. And now she is talking to me. And I want to keep it together as a host, but know that in between I will be fangirling her because she is one of my role models, similar to Minda, similar to Amira, similar to so many people. And I was just telling her or sharing with her that I see so many leadership books, and often, or most of the times, I don't see enough women of color who are talking about the things that women of color, the intersectionality, are facing. It's also important when you want to amplify effective collaboration and communication that leaders learn from different people, different readers, different thought leaders, different amazing speakers that are out there that can share more and share a different lens on intersectionality, on inclusion. So I hope that this hype up wasn't too much for you, but
It's
it was
always
needed.
very
It was
hard,
needed.
Vivian. So this is the part where I'm like, oh, but thank you so much. Really, thank you.
And there's another thing that I'm going to share because our paths crossed 3 years ago. 3 years ago in May, I broke my ankle and I had a moment where I thought my life was over, business wise, but also professional, personal, and dealing with a visible or invisible disability. It's not easy, and it's also not easy to be open about this. So when Ruchika had an LinkedIn live post. I'm trying to keep it together. LinkedIn live post about she's taking a month off, but in the meantime, she wants to make sure to support different individuals from all over the world. And I was thinking, like, okay, shall I submit? Shall I submit? Shall I not submit? Shall I submit? I don't know, but I did. And in July, she shared the following post or a video of mine, and she shared this where she shared my story. So in a way, in 2023, you already showed me a different level of Uncompete. I think that was the precede of Uncompete. I don't know. But for me, it felt very heartwarming. And I want to show my gratitude towards you and towards who you are and how you are showing others the way of how we can collaborate, given that there is enough space for all of us to win.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And the campaign, Amplify July. I think you might have been either you were the first year or the second year. Now I'm
First.
losing track. It
Yeah,
was the
you
first
started
year.
in 2023, so
I started
first
in
year.
2023. I think the idea came to me much earlier, and then to execute it. It actually
Mhm.
takes quite a while to do these things. It's
I
interesting.
understand that. Yeah.
And it just, for me, I felt like there was, I mean, well before the idea of uncompete well before I think the notion that like we have to support each other in a more like in a more tangible way, which I wrote for the
Mm-hmm.
in the book. For me, the main thing was like if you're given a platform in any way, of course the important thing, what the heart of good leadership is
Mm.
that you really bring other people to do their best, whatever that is. You help them realize their dreams. Thank you. Oh, I love that. I need to carry one like that as well. And that we're now this year will be, so I guess this year will be our 23, 24,
Fourth
25,
year.
fourth year.
Yeah.
It'll be our fourth year. We will launch. My wonderful chief of staff Vanessa Arias does all the planning for it. It's her baby. It's really nice to see her as well. Feel really like the two of us spend hours talking about how much we love the people who submit, and we hear from amazing people all around the world like you, Vivian. We hear from people who are like artists and musicians, and
Mm-hmm.
they write poetry, and there, yes, there are books and coaches, and yes, there are podcasters, but it's just there's a level of like, yeah, we're all doing we're in community because we all are trying to do our best to make the world a more inclusive and more just place. But we have so many different ways of doing that. And there's not just one way to do it, which is very inspiring too.
I already have a comment which I need to highlight because I'm not the only fan who's watching this conversation. My dear friend Kimberly,
Hi,
she
Kimberly.
talks about you being a role model. I reference her work so many times in my talks and workshop and recommend her books to everyone.
Thank
So
you.
I shared with Kimberly 2 weeks ago when we had our coffee chat saying that I'm going to interview your role model. And she said like, who?
That's so sweet. um, oh my gosh. Hi, Kimberly. Can I just say, Vivian and
Yes.
Kimberly, like, um, when Inclusion on Purpose came out, obviously I was
Hmm.
extremely happy and delighted and humbled when people would say that to me. But I think this moment in time
Mm.
actually is much more like it actually picks us up. I
Yeah.
think all of us doing this work, like I think this sometimes actually physical weight of like, oh my gosh, like where are we going in the world? Are we going backwards? Are we going to a new level of a new low of
Hmm.
cruelty and lack of humanity? And when you hear other people saying to you like, no, actually, please hold on, like continue what you're doing, it is so much more meaningful than the years where there was interest and there was excitement and there was like however performative. Now when we look back, maybe there was a lot of performativeness as well, but
Hmm.
definitely there were times where you would hear that largely like everyone would be like, oh,
Yeah.
great work, we're really excited about this book. But for people to say it now when the chips are down, like that's when you know it's the real one. So thank
It
you.
is the real deal. And also know that I recently went to an EU event where Europe is taking a stance on inclusion and they are moving forward, even though we are in a way impacted by what's happening across the pond.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that we are pausing or delaying or deactivating it. No, we are doing our best to keep
Yes.
diversity and inclusion alive
Yes.
and give our sauce on it,
Yes.
whatever way we can. So, this is my way of holding that fire, that Olympic fire, and passing it on to somebody else, knowing that they might rebrand it, they might be silent or they might be quiet about it, but Europe is benefiting from inclusion, and that's why we
Mm,
are keeping it here. Okay,
yeah.
let me go back to the official interview.
Okay.
What's your definition of humanizing the workplace?
Yeah, I thought a lot about this, Vivian, when you sent me this question. And the
Hmm.
reality is, I don't have a quick and easy answer because one of the challenges with the workplace, and especially as I started researching for Uncompete, is how much the history of the workplace comes from inequity, treating some people as human and others as not, or actually going through very targeted campaigns to prove, even using fake pseudoscience to show that, like, oh, women are lesser than men,
Mm,
or people of color are less intelligent or less
mhm,
hardworking or less whatever, or like all this racial, biological, nationality determination, right? And this is actually a side story, but my deep love is actually history, and I've studied especially colonial history, and especially the British
mm,
colonial history to quite a big degree. And I've thought, maybe in later on in life, maybe I should go back and do that again. But you see the seeds of like the modern workplace built on the idea that some people are more human than others, and some people
mhm,
deserve to be paid more or have more, um, have a sort of a more an experience more tailored to their humanity than
yeah,
others, is probably the easiest and simplest way I can put this. And of course, here in the United States, across the pond, we see that even more, right? Like you see
mhm,
where your basic health insurance is tied to your right to healthcare is tied to how much you produce, and therefore, if you're more human, or if you're seen as more human, you have better healthcare, right? And if you're seen as less human, you have very low basic healthcare, or even no healthcare, which is just absurd to me. So, in bringing this back to humanizing the workplace, I have to say, like, I think a lot of how it started, a lot of the modern work, both ancient and modern, especially workplaces, has been with the paradigm that, like, some people are more human than others. And so when I think about humanizing the workplace, really it's about saying, like, no, actually everyone who works in, who contributes to our workplaces, who is in them, is human and deserves
mhm,
to be treated and recognized for
mhm,
their full humanity. And I think even more so, when I know we talked about this a little bit backstage, but as AI becomes so much more, like, there's a clear difference, right, between the machine's
yeah,
capabilities and our capabilities as humans. Humanizing the workplace and recognizing what humans bring to the workplace,
mhm.
I don't think there's been a more important time to have this conversation.
I love what you are sharing, and also the fact that you are mentioning that everybody who contributes in the workplace, whether it's somebody who is responsible for keeping things tidy in the workplace,
Exactly. Yes.
whether it's a leader, whether it's janitor, whether
Yes.
it's the middle manager, everybody deserves the respect and just a simple hello.
Yes.
Oftentimes when I meet janitors or I meet the receptionist, they don't even get a simple hello,
That's
and
right.
I stand there and really greet them and say
Yes.
hello, and they feel seen and acknowledged. But also sometimes they are less like, okay, are you talking to me? Yes, I see you, I value
Yes.
you because
Oh
you
my
add
gosh.
value to everything that this company stands for.
Yeah. And I just love that, because I think when I'm asked, even when Inclusion on Purpose came out, and even now with Uncompete, it's like, how do you operationalize, right? Especially in the US, there's a lot of, like, give me the practical, tactical advice quickly. Make it quick, make it a
Yeah.
soundbite, make it
Mhm.
something we can clip to a social media clip. I mean, recognizing people's humanity is
Yeah.
so important, and especially people who have been the most overlooked and marginalized.
Mhm.
And so for me, I always think about, like, how do we do this in every workplace? And especially, we know disproportionately women of color occupy and have been forced to occupy janitorial roles that are not only paid much less, but also often dangerous, and
Mhm.
often, you know, disproportionately, subject to whether it's sexual harassment or other sort of dangers. So I think understanding and recognizing that, like, in even making someone's feel seen, you're
Mhm.
able to change that paradigm of, like, you're not as human as others, which I think is, again, how the workplace hierarchy has been built.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to shift it to a different question,
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
is asking you, what is your favorite song that energizes you? Whether it's while you're working or not, what is your go-to
Oh.
song to empower you?
Okay, I will tell you, there's a bit of a longer story. Do we have time? But I
Yeah,
won't
we
make it
do.
too long.
We
Okay.
do.
So my favorite song for a long time to energize me was actually it's controversial, "Fly" by Nicki Minaj. But I know. But
I'm not
because
judging, but I'm
I know, no,
looking, but
no,
I'm
I
not
know,
judging.
no, no. I start, and then obviously when there was a lot of unraveling done, as we can see,
Mhm.
I was like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, this cannot be the song that I listen to pump myself up. So for me, in the last few years, it's been free. I just wanted to admit that.
Mhm.
I wanted to say that, like, this is where I think we are again reckoning with this idea of, like, can someone be brilliant, but also, or like do good work and make contributions, but also is problematic, and where do you go from there? And for me, I'm like,
Yeah.
no, there in no way, shape, or form do you allow people a free pass just because they make good music or they.
I can identify because I used to be a Diddy fan,
Oh
and
yeah,
now
me
I
too.
am
Me too.
deactivating Diddy.
Absolutely. I was at the gym the other day and actually told them, I said, can
Yeah,
you skip to the next song? Because this is not appropriate. When Diddy,
exactly.
exactly. Diddy's a
Yeah.
great example. Same. So for me now, I would say it's Freedom by Beyonce. And every time I've
Yeah.
listened to it, and, and just again, the history of it, right? Like, it came out in, at a time where I think the world was like, what is happening? And so,
Mhm.
I think for me,
Not
that's
knowing 10 years later that we needed we
so.
needed that
So
song now more than ever.
yeah, yeah. We don't learn, it seems, from our mistakes.
Beyonce is on to something. And for
Yeah.
those of you who are a Beehive fan, I think that she might be dropping something
It
this weekend.
seems
But
like it, right? There's some buzzing going on there. So
exactly.
and I'm a big fan, and I think I've always just been, just from being a, teenager in Singapore, where I wonder, Vivian, if there's some overlap here, but like being in
Mhm.
Singapore, which is 80% Chinese, so being an ethnic minority there, being, taller and larger than the average
Ooh,
person around me,
yeah.
much darker skinned, especially
Mhm.
when I was in, in school, and seeing Beyonce, like, the entire Destiny's Child, let's be clear, including Kelly
Yeah.
and Michelle and everyone, but being able to see on screen these beautiful
Mhm.
black, full figured, like,
Yeah.
women. Oh
Yeah.
my, girls, really. I mean, we grew
Yeah.
up, I feel like, together. Is, I mean, so meaningful. I will always, always root for all of them, but especially Beyonce.
They are making a huge difference, and
Yeah,
I love about where they are right now, every woman of the Destiny's Child ensemble, is that they are not only singing, but they are telling a story that has oftentimes has a connection with the history, especially Beyonce.
especially. By
Yeah.
the way, you must, if you've not, for anyone watching, a book recommendation I cannot recommend enough is her mom's book, Matriarch
Mm,
by
yeah.
Tina
Yeah.
Knowles,
Yeah.
which was incredible. And even this history of Beyonce's name has so much of
Hmm.
history. I mean,
Yeah.
essentially, Tina writes how, it would have been erased because it was her last name, but it would have been erased. And so she gave her daughter the name Beyonce,
Yeah.
which was misspelled on her birth. I mean, it was just incredible, the story. So
There are so
anyway,
many there.
here
There's
we
so many
are
there.
off
Yeah,
on a tangent,
matriarch
Vivian.
is good.
It's so
Matriarch is good. But going back to you, because it's
yes.
about your book, and I know that you're practicing uncompete by sharing other people's name, but I want to know
Okay.
who or what inspired you to write about uncompete? Where were you and what was going through your mind? I need to write this book today, now.
So good. Thank you for this great question. So there are two things. One is personal. One is that I essentially, I mean, when I look back at my life, my parents were married, but it was a very unhappy marriage, and
Hmm.
they've since divorced. I've been estranged from my father for over 10 years. But really, the story of Uncompete, the personal side, is in many ways it's paying homage to my mother. My
Mm.
mother practiced growing up in a hyper capitalistic society like Singapore, and my father was really the opposite of Uncompete. I was able to see that actually you can get so much more joy and peace and connection and collaboration community when you uncompete. And of course there was no word for it, but I saw the way my mom operated and I realized it's intentional, right? Like
Mhm.
it's a choice, because in Singapore, and especially being of an immigrant Indian community, it's normal to compare, to compete, to put others down, to elbow other people out of the way, to say like only concentrate on what's your share. So
Mhm.
seeing my mom make a very active choice to choose differently, to not be in these circles of like women who would gossip. There's a lot of like, there's this trope of the Indian auntie who puts other people down and who gossips and
We
talks
we we have
badly.
that as well in Black
you
families
you
as
have it in
well.
Black families as well.
Yeah, we
I've
have.
been
I
made
mean,
aware.
it feels like you're talking about
Yeah.
certain family members or certain
Yes.
friends or certain relatives, so we have that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was what I grew up with all the time, and seeing my mom make a different choice. Like she would say, she'd be like, how can I put down someone else's child? Like how
Yeah.
can I put down a
Yeah.
child and how can I tell someone whose child is struggling in school, like how can I brag to them about how wonderful my children are when
Mhm.
like they're hurting, right? So I saw that, okay, this is an active choice. And so I wanted to, figure out a way to honor my mom, just because I was like,
That's
this is
beautiful.
beautiful. And
Yeah.
I really think of Uncompete as a business book that's like, it's wrapped up in a business book, but it's actually a love letter to my mom. So there's that. But from a more sort of workplace professional standpoint, you're an inclusion strategist too. So what happened is I was speaking at a big conference about women in the workplace, and
Mm.
it was wonderful. Like we're having a great conversation. I was with another practitioner, and then inevitably from the audience, there was a question like, yes, it sounds great in theory that like women's leadership in this industry, wonderful, blah, blah, blah. But what about the men? How do we do this
Mm.
work so that the men don't feel, like they are going to lose out? And it was very curious to me because it's not like it was the first time I heard it, but I think something just sparked in me. I was like, what is going on? Like, how are we equating women's leadership with men losing out? And I realized
Mhm.
that so much of that zero sum thinking of like this person gets ahead, so this person loses out, or this group wins and this group loses, is what is one of the biggest blockers to creating a more equitable and just and inclusive society and workplace. And so
Mhm.
I got off stage, I was flying back home to Seattle, and I just started like making notes. I was like, there has to, like, why is it a competition? Who said it's a competition when
Mhm.
the evidence is so clear that a rising tide lifts all boats? So that's a long answer to say, like, there was a personal connection to Uncompete with my mom, and then definitely the
Both
professional.
can be true, right?
Both
Both
can be
can be
true, and
true. So,
both have informed the book and the work that I'm trying to do
mhm.
very much.
You talk about competition, but then again, you talk about not competing or uncompeting. Can you help people understand what you mean with uncompeting and why this is different than traditional views of competition?
Yeah. I mean, at the core of it, uncompete is a word I made up, which I
Mhm.
always tell people proudly because I actually growing up in Singapore, speaking Hindi at home. When my parents put me in an English speaking, like an English school,
Mhm.
actually in the start, my teachers told my mom, like, I don't think she'll ever really be able to speak English well. So that was interesting, and
Wow.
it's interesting when you tell, it's I think back and I'm like, how did someone say like a 6 or 7 year old, just because they hadn't grown up speaking English at home, like how can you say that they're not going to be able to ever learn this language, right? Like that's like the definition of like 5, 6, 7, 8 year olds are much better at learning than like I can understand if I came in now in my, in your 30s and 40s, if you're told like it's harder, sure, it's not impossible. Anyway, so uncompete is definitely a word I made up, but And I have to say that for me, the traditional view of competition is, I mean, if you look up the dictionary definition of competition, it is that it is where, one or where two or more parties are basically in a race to try and get something, and only one person can win. Like, by
Mhm.
definition, competition is one person wins and one or everyone else. Like, if there's multiple parties, everyone else loses. There can only be
Mhm.
one winner. And Uncompete challenges that head on, and it says that even in a competition like, say, the Olympics or a sports competition, maybe in those definitions, it competition works, right? Because everyone knows the rules. You start from the same starting point. Even then, bias, and I know we can talk about like Serena Williams and other sports people who tell us how much, who have showed us how much racism and other biases impact.
Mhm.
But even then, in theory, if we say sports is like a even competition, right? Everyone knows the rules. You know what a foul looks like. You know what a disqualification looks like. You know what winning looks like. That's clearly defined. Everyone agrees to those terms. In real life, that's just not possible. You cannot.
Mhm.
There is no perfect competition, right? When you think about nepotism, you think about corruption, when you think about certainly biases, gender bias, racial bias, like all of these other factors that have been in place, you can never
Mhm.
call it a perfect competition. So when an organization will come up to me, a company leader will say like, oh no, our promotion cycle is very meritocratic, right? Like, it's only based on how much you do or how much output you have. You have to sit down and say, actually, is that true? Like, are you not
Mhm.
telling me that someone who it looks more like, and this is research backs this up, like that, someone who's the same race and gender as you doesn't have an unfair advantage of winning this competition, right? And again, data backs this up. Three-quarters of the people who get sponsored into a higher role in the workplace have the same they are the same race and gender as the person who sponsored them. So senior leaders, white men. The people who get sponsored up the ranks are also disproportionately white men. So
Yeah.
I think I really wanted to challenge this idea, and it's not easy. I mean, even with inclusion on purpose, when I laid out the data, it was hard to do, even when the data was very clear that
Mhm.
it's not a level playing field. And with Uncompete, it's taking it even a step further and saying the actual rules the unsaid rule that we believe that like competition is the best way to get ahead and to bring out the best in us is actually flawed.
Yeah, and I also want to add something, a perspective from Europe, because Europe is really advocating when it comes to pay transparency that by I think by 2030 more and more companies need to oblige by these rules. So I'm proud and I'm happy that the EU is following a different course of showing some more transparency, because oftentimes leaders or other people are saying, yeah, but there is no difference. And we are also very secretive about our wages or what we are getting, that you need to show us the money, you need to show the directive, you need to show, okay, if I do this and if I stay in this position for 3 years and if I tick the boxes when it comes to leveling up, will I get that promotion, will I get that ranking, and how will you rate that, so that everybody knows the rules of engagement of reaching that level. And I'm really proud of Europe doing that. I hope more continents to follow this suit, but for now, I want to applaud Europe for doing that as well.
I love that. And actually, data shows that being transparent about, especially about wages, can create a big change. I think the one thing I will say
Mhm.
is uh, I read about this and then I was interviewed on it about how in the US, when companies have to make salary transparent, like you're
Mhm.
hiring for a job and you'll say, we're hiring for this job, here's the salary range. One of the ways they go around creating more equality in states where you have to write down the pay up front
Mhm.
is they actually
Mhm.
include very large salary bands. So they'll say this
Mhm.
job, the wage band is between 50,000 and $150,000. So
Yeah.
there's a huge gap in what they do, and that range actually what it does is it discourages more women for asking for more
Yeah.
because of entrench
We
it or
will,
bias
most of the time, women will go maybe for the
on the low.
middle or a little bit
Maybe.
lower than the middle, even.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, and when I get asked about this, I'll always say that in my experience, it's not that we believe we're worth less. It's that there is so much data to support that when women
Mhm.
negotiate, we're less
Yeah.
likely to get what we want. And especially if you're women of color, you
Yeah.
add additional intersectionality to this. I write this in the book in an inclusion on purpose. There's data to back this up. So it's not like we go in being like, oh, we're worth, on the lower edge. It's that we encounter so much of bias when we say like, oh no, we're actually worth the higher end. It's kind of like, oh well, she's going against racial stereotypes, she's going against gender stereotypes, or she's conforming to harmful
And
racial
it's it's
stereotypes.
it's even similar as looking up from a freelance perspective.
Yes.
When I
Yes.
started in the beginning, I didn't ask for the budget. Now my question is, okay, what is
What's
the
the
budget?
budget?
What's the range?
Yes.
What's the range? What other people are asking, and what other people, or what are you giving other people? Because
Yes.
then I can make a decision if we are going to collaborate together
Yes.
or not. And
Yeah.
in the Netherlands, I'm not going to say any company names. There are some companies out there that do a whole tango to disclose the amount. I don't do tango. I do salsa. I do bachata.
I
I do
love
some
it.
R&B. I don't
Yes,
tango.
girl. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
I
tango
want
is
to offer transparency ahead of time, and I'm
totally.
also asking you transparency ahead of time. So
Yeah.
no, we don't
And
do that.
thank you, Vivian. And actually one thing I do want to add is how much when you like, this is where uncompeting or to uncompete has a very important part to play, as I write it
Yeah.
even in the book, that like, yes, if you are at that company, please like go ahead and be honest, like this is what we're
Mm-hmm.
paying, like be upfront, right? it
Yeah.
it it safeguards against that bias that like women have to face, where we ask and then we're seen as like disagreeable, less likable, less respected, like all of these things. But I also think that like one of the things that we as people in community can do to each other is if we're
Mm-hmm.
referring an opportunity, we're the
Mm-hmm.
people who are. So firstly, it's important to refer opportunities, but it's also important to say, like I would say to you, Vivian, if someone said like, hey, do you know, Ruchika, do you know Vivian? Do you think, can you reach out to her? We need, some consulting, or
Yeah.
we want to engage with her. My role can very much also be, I would say, thank you, company A. Could you tell
Mhm.
me what sort of range you're thinking? What's your
Yeah,
budget, so that I can
yeah,
relay that to Vivian? And then
yeah,
I would tell Vivian, because I
yeah.
think that's the other part. Like we forget that we have power. And I have had situations where someone's like, oh, we have no budget, but we want to bring in your, if you could bring in your
I'm not
friend.
able to share my
And
friends with no
and
budget.
I say, unfortunately, I'm not. I actually have said to companies, I've
Yeah,
said like, I'm uncomfortable
yeah,
sharing an opportunity that's
yeah,
unpaid. So could you
yeah.
come back when it is paid? You know what I
Exactly,
mean? When you have the budget. And I think these
exactly.
are ways that we, again, like I think part of Uncompete is there's this thought that like, oh, you can only make a difference if you're like a senior leader, if you've got like this
Mhm.
huge title. And the reality is like, no, we all have spheres of influence. We can all make a difference.
Definitely. Thank you for bringing this up. And I want to be considerate of the time, so asking you maybe three questions.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Um,
As you can tell, I love to chat. So I'm going to.
don't mind you chatting. Don't mind you chatting. I wanna ask the following. How can we, and we in the workplace, encourage people to embrace a culture of radical generosity in both personal and professional settings as well?
Yeah, this is really a hard question, Vivian, because I mean, I think everyone should be radically generous. The idea of
Mhm,
radical generosity is to actually go an additional step further than just what is easily, it's easy to
mhm,
be generous in that situation, right? So, like, um, for me, it would be if Vivian, I asked Vivian, like, Vivian, how can I, whatever, support you in your business, or how can I support you in your personal life? It's not always the path of support that's the easiest, the most convenient.
Mhm.
Sometimes it
Yeah.
requires additional, like it might require me to email some people and say, oh, do you want to, can I introduce you to Vivian? If Vivian's like, oh, well, or Vivian or any friend is like, oh, I'm going, like, yeah, I'm going through a hard time, it would be really helpful if you could deliver a meal or something. Like, it would be that additional effort. It's not the easiest
Mhm.
option always. And it's a way of resisting a system and a community. Is sort of the norms that tell us that, like, your work is more important than who you are as a human. Your time is at a premium because you only need to think about supporting and improving yourself, right? And those
Mhm.
who are like immediately in your family or in your circle and nobody else. And so I see it as like a form of resistance to be radically generous, to say to people,
Mhm.
like, what do you need? A few weeks ago, someone I didn't actually know that well had a baby. And I said, like, I remember when, now it's been
Ooh.
10 years, now it's been
Ooh.
10 years, now it's been
I
10 years.
know.
But I remember those early newborn days. And I
Mhm.
just said, like, I was like, I don't even know you that well, but I would
Yeah.
love to come over and bring
Yeah.
khichdi, which is an Indian
Yeah.
lentil porridge that I was like literally living on for 6 months after
Mhm.
I gave birth,
Mhm.
and was like the first meal my son had when he was born, when he started eating. But I dropped it over, right?
Yeah.
And it took effort, right? Like, I have a lot going
Yeah.
on, but it took effort. But it for me, it was this idea, like, you put out into the world the change you want to be.
Mm.
And that is
Yeah.
it. It requires action, it requires friction, it requires inconvenience. Like, I want to say again, like, it's not just like, oh, let's just be nice to everyone. It's a radical form of resistance to say,
Yeah.
like, okay, the world tells me it's more important, I need to do my business, or I need to make money, or I need to do this, but where in my life do I have time
Mhm.
to practice radical generosity?
Exactly. The example what you're mentioning right now, a dear friend of mine, she is South African. She is in the Netherlands, not with her family. She has a few friends and she lives nearby. And I asked her if there is anything that I can do, given that you're now a new mom. Just
Yeah,
ask, because
yeah,
I know the time when my in-laws helped us out by
yeah.
providing just 1 hour of sleep. Till this day, I cherish that gift,
Yes,
that gesture
yes,
that they made for us to just catch up some sleep.
yeah, yeah. And Vivian, the cultures we come from,
Mhm.
you do that. And in the
Yeah,
West, in a capitalistic driven, and it's going away. Like, every time I go back
yeah.
to Singapore, every time I even go back to, I don't go back to my ancestral country, India, as much as I would
Mhm.
like to. I was there this year in December and early Jan, and it was hard. It was hard to see that,
Mhm.
in favor of like hustle and like getting ahead and like competing with each other and who's doing more and who's earning more, we are
Mhm.
losing that. We are
Yeah.
losing that communal impact, and we're losing that idea that, like, actually raising the next generation, it doesn't have to be your own children, but like
Mhm.
being part of the village that raises the next generation is inherently valuable. So
Yeah.
bringing it back to like humanizing the workplace,
Yeah.
that's a very important part of it too.
Definitely. You mentioned something regarding AI in the beginning,
Mm,
and I also asked you this question backstage. What is your view on AI at the moment, the way that it's used right now, and how do you see Uncompete being part of AI's journey?
mm. I mean, it's very concerning, I'll be honest. One of the things, as I researched and did more understanding, like leveling up of my own understanding of
Mhm.
especially what generative AI and what these companies that offer AI, technologies have done. It's been a race. It's that same competitive, same. I mean, OpenAI, one of the best books I've read about the rise of OpenAI is The Empire of AI by Karen Howe. It's
Mhm.
called The Empire. And she literally uses the same language that the British and the other European colonizers, called themselves empire building. And she uses that language, Karen Howe, who's a wonderful journalist. And so I think in even trying to create a technology that is powerful and in many ways could have wonderful use cases, but going with it with that competitive, like, elbow others out of the way, don't put in ethical guardrails. Anyone who
That part.
challenges anyone who challenges, like, hey, is
Yeah.
this ethical? Should we be slowing down? Should we be looking at biases? Everyone who does that is sort of pushed to the wayside. So I think there is that side of it that is really concerning to me. The other side of it, having used AI for some of the work I do, and experimenting with it, I'm I'm of the belief that we are not at a place. And again, I say this as someone who is in a field that, like, isn't necessarily being disrupted by AI as
Hmm.
maybe others, but I do think that a lot of the promise of it has been overhyped, and I'd be very curious to see where we are. And I say that, I say this not as like an expert, but I say this as someone who has personally
I,
engaged.
I I want to underline, even though you are saying that it's not as an expert, I do believe that there will be a bigger
Yeah,
burst of the bubble
I do see it
happening
too. I do. I think
within now and three
yeah.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you on this. And I actually think what's going to happen is hopefully more of us who use the tools. Again, the environmental side of it is very concerning to me as well,
Yeah.
deeply, the environmental load on AI. I think the concern I have more is for younger people. And I hope it
Hmm.
doesn't take
That they
away.
are losing their critical
They're
thinking
losing
muscles.
their critical thinking. They're
Yeah.
used to getting instant ideas and instant information, much more
Yeah.
than even with Google. And
Mm.
it's offered in such a definitive way, right? Like
Hmm.
with Google, you still had to surf
Do
through
your
and figure out,
research.
do
Yeah.
your research, figure
Yeah.
out which website is real or not, what information is true or not. And I think for me that is the area. And again, trying to
Hmm.
engage my now nearly 10-year-old son, like, let's do a lot of reading, let's do a lot of critical thinking. If you do
Yeah.
see, if when you Google something and you get the AI overview right
Answer.
at the top,
Yeah.
let's
Hmm.
let's let's peel away at what's real and what's not.
Yeah. Great that you're teaching your son that. My son is also 12, and we are
Ah,
going through
yeah,
those
I bet.
stages because it's really challenging for them to trust their gut
Yes.
and look to things to on a different way because we I mean, I grew up with encyclopedia. I grew up with the
Yeah,
library, and
me
now
too.
they are on the internet
I
thinking that
know.
the internet knows everything. No, the internet
Yeah.
doesn't know anything.
No,
Doesn't at
no.
all. Last question. I am curious, given that we are in 2026 and it's almost halfway through, and we are fast forwarding towards 2030. What is your view on humanizing the workplace and the level of uncompete in the workplace?
Such a fabulous question. Thinking, like, I wish I had a crystal ball. I mean, I can't. As I think, actually, interestingly, like, had I been asked this 5 years ago, I wouldn't have said it's as urgent as I think it is now to
Mm,
humanize the
yeah.
workplace, because we are literally neck to neck with human
Mm-hmm.
versus machine, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, whether it's organizations making the decision, like, let me get rid of people because the machines are going to come in and do this work, whether it's actually, again, thinking of the next generations, what fields should they go into. A lot of us, I've talked to a lot of people who are technology executives, actually, who
Mm-hmm.
have said that they themselves encourage their own children to learn at least one trade, whether it's you
Yeah.
become a barber, like, you learn how to cut hair, or you learn how to be cook it, like cook in a restaurant or something like that, be able to do some work that AI cannot disrupt, like a physical work, because they believe that AI will disrupt a lot of the whatever jobs that you do in front of a computer. So I think, for me, I think that the importance of humanizing the workplace becomes even more urgent between now and 2030. And I think
Mm-hmm.
the way we do that is through uncompeting. I think, especially as humans, we do need to band together in solidarity and say, like, we refuse to accept certain things. I refuse to use AI for certain things, even if it would make my life so much easier. As an author, it would be so much easier for me to just, like, upload my ideas into AI and say, like, create content all the time around this book or these ideas.
And but then it wouldn't be you. It
But
would
then it's
be
not
one of
me.
the many robot
Yeah.
versions
Yeah.
of you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I refuse, and when I'm in community with other people who do the thing that I do, I say the same thing. I say that the way we uncompete is we almost all agree that we're not going to go down this path of sharing our ideas and uploading ourselves onto the internet to, to have
Hmm.
an AI version of us.
True. I don't know which media outlet it was, but I think it was Business Insider or New York Reporter where they interviewed a lot of CFOs that said something about AI not being able to promise and to fix and to produce the performance that they were hyped to believe in.
That's right.
So this will be an interesting aspect of, let's see what AI will do at the end of the year. Is it valuable for so many companies to diminish and dehumanize so many people and laying them off as they are nothing? Because it will be a karma thing that will come back as a boomerang. That's what
I
I
think
believe.
so. I totally do. And therefore, a longer conversation for another day is I think places in Europe are already sort of asking like what does a universal basic income look like? Like if you do disrupt people's jobs and you do lay them off, and we do say this technology can be so powerful that we don't need humans to do certain jobs,
Hmm.
how do we still ensure that they are humanized and are paid a living wage and are able to like live, if we've now created these machines that are able to do humans jobs, and humans don't have as many jobs available.
Final comment from Kim, and Kim says she loves this. Ruchika also has a LinkedIn course as well. So if you have access to her course, learn from this woman. Find her on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. I don't think Twitter,
Not
right?
anymore.
No,
I had
not
to I
anymore.
I deleted
LinkedIn,
it
Instagram, those are safe spaces. And
for
read her
now.
book because her book, well, safe spaces with a
Yeah.
quote. But read her book and you'll learn more about her, or follow the course and you'll know more about what she's thinking and how you can contribute to uncompeting or inclusion on purpose. It was my utmost honor and
Mine
pleasure
too,
and joy
Vivian.
to have
Thank
this
you.
conversation with you. So thank you, Ruchika, for being
Thank you.
here. And I have nothing else to say anymore. Thank
Me
you.
too, mic drop. Oh, that was so heartwarming at this time. I needed it to, you know, keep on. I think we do need
Keep
that.
pushing on.
We
Keep
need to
pushing. And
remember
whenever
that.
you're in Europe, let me know. You
I
never know
will.
where our crosses where we can cross our path, but
I would
let me
love
know.
that. I
Yeah.
would love that. Thank you. And thank you, Kim, for that as well. That was very generous of you. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Until next
everyone.
time.
Thank you.